Mate, the ice cream man still didn't come. Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel, and today we have a half year roundup for you. So I've done this once before and that was 2 years ago, so that went really well. This time I'm really going to try and do it so you know it's twice a year, June and December. So what this basically is a roundup of the books that I have read in the past 6 months. A lot of these books have their own independent book reviews, so if any of them kind of take your fancy, then I will link them in the description and also pop them up here. So if you want to know what I've read through the last 6 months, which in all honesty was a lot more than I actually thought looking at the pile, but not as much as a lot of people, then just keep on watching. Maybe towards the beginning of the year this is going to be a little bit inaccurate and I may miss some books out, but that is just because it was a long time ago and I wasn't very good at being on it with tracking my books for reviews and stuff. Anyway, starting with January, Reverie by Ryan Sala was the read of the month because that is the only book that I read. Just this one. If you don't know about Reverie, it's a YA fantasy book. I'd say fantasy, and it's about this group of teens who control reveries effectively. So in this world, people's dreams kind of become out of control and they need controlling by this group of teens who for some reason are the only ones that aren't affected by the reverie themselves. And it follows the journey of one member of the group who gets into a really big accident and his memory just goes, but he doesn't know that he is in this group. He doesn't know that he's part of this elite group that can see the reveries and experience them rather than being taken a hold of them. So his friends, without trying to overwhelm him, try and get him back. This is one of the books that I have got an exclusive review to, so that'll be linked in the description, so check that out if this is taking your fancy. But overall it was really good. Very interesting concept. I don't think there's a sequel, but to be honest, doesn't really need one. It kind of tidied itself up and I've never seen a concept like that before, so I thought that was really good and I definitely did enjoy it. So we are now moving over into February. The book of the month, because again I think I only read one book that month, is the Djinn Patrol on the Purple Line. I'm turning it over because this is actually a PR copy that I was gifted. This book again has its own individual book review that is linked in the description, but it follows the adventure of this little Indian boy called Jay, and he lives in the slums of India. His story and his life as certain kids around the slums start to go missing, and him and his little band of merry thieves of kids from school and who he is friends with try and solve it. So they act like little detectives and they go off around the Basti, which is what his little slum is called, and they're trying to basically act like detectives, asking market vendors and local people if they knew anything about the kids. And amongst all this lightheartedness that Anappara kind of brings together, underneath there is just this level of darkness, of dread. You just know something rotten is going on, and there's more to the story of these kids just going missing and getting lost and getting stolen by djinns and all of that. It's a really harrowing story, and I think it's even more effective because it is from the point of view of like a kid. I think he's only about 7, so because it is from his perspective, he doesn't understand the full truth of what he's saying, but us as an adult reader do, and that's the bit that like slaps you in the face. So this one is a really good read. So now we are into March, and this is the first and I think only non-fiction book. So we have Feminists, Don't Wear Pink and Other Lies, and this is curated by Scarlett Curtis but features a lot of other female writers, creators, authors in this. So it's a collection of female experience and feminist thought. I picked it up at Yauk last year and only just got around to reading it this year, about 6 months later, but it was such an eye-opening and relatable collection of experiences that there's just, I think I've highlighted, I don't know if you can see, but there's a fair bit of annotation in there because a lot of it was just like things that everyone experiences but doesn't really talk about, so you think you're alone. So the way Scarlett Curtis has kind of curated it is that there is the epiphany stage. So it's kind of, she asks them all this question about what it is to be a feminist, and she's then kind of put them into their own section. So there's the epiphany stage, there is the anger, there is joy, there is a break for poetry, there is the action, there's the education, and then there's some further reading, some last words. All in all, it's a really good baseline for anyone really wanting to teach themselves more about feminism, about the feminist movement, especially I'd say third wave feminism is what we're in now in this contemporary era, because a lot of feminist theory, the feminist thought, is probably people that you know from the 80s, like Germaine Greer and kind of all of those people, but this really brings it into the 21st century and it is really good. I gave this to my brother to read because there was one chapter in it, I think by Jamila Jamil. Let me have a look. This is an incredible collection and you need it in your life. Still with March, we have The Graces by Laure Eve, and again this was another Yelk purchase for me, and it is a YA fantasy. It follows this girl who moves into this new town and falls in love with a set of siblings. No, it is not Twilight. Sounds very Twilight-esque, but it is not. So these siblings are all kind of deemed to be witches by the local village people. So it's basically about this girl who's a bit of an outcast and she falls in love with this family, doesn't really know them, and then she starts to kind of weasel her way in, and a lot of things kind of go wrong from there on. It's definitely one geared towards younger readers, I think. Looking back at it now, I did enjoy it. The main protagonist, it was just a bit pathetic, and I think if you watch my review of this book, I think I say the same thing, or maybe my views have changed. Either way, she's a bit pathetic, a bit annoying, but I did really like the Graces themselves and I did really like the concept, but for me it was just a bit too much like Twilight. Like this really secret, secluded, beautiful, everyone wants to be them type family and siblings, and then there's this new girl that comes into town that's also a little bit mysterious and keeps to herself, and then gets taken in by the family because they're also intrigued by her, and they live in this really nice fancy house out of the way in the countryside. Like, could you get any more Twilight? So that one, I mean, it's okay. If you're a younger reader, I would recommend it to you, but anyone a bit older, I just think you'd find it a little bit cringe, that's all. Now we're into April, and we have Chain of Gold by Cassandra Clare. This is her first book in her new series, The Last Hours, and this is basically a kind of sequel to The Infernal Devices. So it is set in Victorian England after, well, quite a few years after the events of the Infernal Devices, and it is centred around Lucy and James, which are the Herondale siblings. You kind of have this whole merry band of thieves thing going on. So you've got James and his 3 other friends, you have Cordelia Carstairs, I don't know how to say her name, that has just come over, and she has some sort of mystery, and then James is in love with this Blackthorn woman who is also shrouded in mystery. And while I really love Cassandra Clare's work, this one kind of missed the mark for me. I love the concept and I loved all of the characters, but I think there was just too many of them for her to give enough attention to each of them. It didn't really leave like a lasting impression on me. Like The Dark Artifices, that series had me hooked. I loved it. I resonated with characters. I was emotionally connected to them, but this one, not so much. So I don't know if it's because I wasn't really as into the Infernal Devices as everyone else was, or maybe I'm just not really into this time period or whatever, but it just wasn't for me. The detail and all of the kind of Cassandra Clare tropes, her attention to detail, her research, her character descriptions, her inclusivity was all there. And I loved all of that, but the plot, I think, just kind of missed it. I think it just didn't need to be as big as well. Okay, so my next reads for April were the last 2 books in the Folk of Air trilogy. So it was The Wicked King and The Queen of Nothing. Now, when I tell you I read these over a space of about 3 days, 4 days, then that is what happened. The world of fairy that Holly Black has created is just on another level. Again, there is a series review, I think, on my channel. If not, I know there is a Wicked King review somewhere. Might be in the description. I don't know, please don't hold me to it. This trilogy is incredible. The attention to detail that Holly Black has put into her novels, the storyline, the plot twists, everything from the get-go got me. If you're into some hardcore YA fantasy, fairy type loving, then you will love this, because I love this. you've got your cliche romance, you've got your bad mysterious boy, you've got your strong independent girl that's also a bit flawed, you've got your betrayal, you've got your anger, you've got your lust, you've got your love. It's just there. It is just there. So you need that one. Now we are into May, and the first book I read in May was Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, and this is the first book of hers I've ever read. I know she's also written Six of Crows. It's on my TBR and I do need to read it. I know, okay? As someone put it in my live today, this book is definitely just a little bit lukewarm. Just a little bit. The beginning really gave me a hard time. I struggled with the beginning quite a lot. It was purely because the narrative flow just went up and down. It wasn't constant. It wasn't like a constant level of increase to the climax. It just was like, got really exciting and then it got really dull and then it got a bit exciting and then it got really dull. So it just kind of went up and down. I was like, where is this going? I had no real direction of the situation. So that just kind of put me off. Got about 3/4 of the way through the novel until I actually started really enjoying it. And that was because the pace was just a lot more constant. The storyline kind of had more of a direction, whereas before it didn't really. So I don't know. I would kind of recommend it if you're into murder mystery. But then again, it's just, I'm a bit on the fence about it, but it's worth a try because I know some people really love it and some people really hate it, so I think it's one of those that divides people. The next book on my list for May was the Eve of Man series by Tom and Giovanna Fletcher. I have now read the first two and there will be a third one, so this is going to be a trilogy from what I can tell, but the third book does not come out until next year. This is a typical YA feminist dystopia series and I loved every minute of it. The series and the two books combined were just brilliant. I loved the first one a lot more than the second one. The second one kind of had its ups and downs for me, but the whole concept, even though it was unique, it wasn't at the same time. So it definitely had a lot of Hunger Games parallels, a lot of Handmaid's Tale parallels, but despite that, this is definitely geared towards a more younger audience, but I loved it. It was full of a few cliches, I'm not gonna lie to you, but I loved it regardless. And I would really recommend this to people that I knew loved things like the Hunger Games and Divergent and was into dystopia and was also just generally into younger contemporary YA. It was really good. We are now on to June, and June is when I started the Children of Blood and Bone series. I really hope it's not just a duology and I hope that there is another book, because this series by Tomi Adeyemi hit me. Okay, it hit me hard. I had Children of Blood and Bone on my shelf for such a long time, and it wasn't until I started pushing myself to read more ethnically diverse novels that I thought, do you know what, pick it up, you've had it for such a long time, just read it. And I am so glad that I did. At first I just thought it was going to be a really cliche and cringy magic book, but it is not. The world of Orisha was written so brilliantly, the characters are so complex and diverse, and from one minute you're loving one character, one minute you're loving the other, and it creates a distrust level that you never knew existed. And that's great, because if an author can make you feel so many emotions like that just with words, I think they have the greatest superpower of all time. This series was brilliantly written, the imagery was beautiful, the concept was incredible, and I just can't think of anything else to say about it because it was just really good, and I just recommend it to everyone that loves YA, loves fantasy. This is definitely really fantastical. I don't know if that's a word. Okay, so that was my half-year roundup. I hoped you enjoyed it. A lot of these books, like you probably would have gathered, I really enjoyed and I definitely recommend them. There is the odd few that I'm a bit on the fence about and I probably wouldn't pick up again or reread. So I will try and keep better track of my books in the future so that when I do this video again it's a little bit more organised. If you have any of your own recommendations or any books that that you remember that really stuck out to you for the past 6 months, leave them in the description. Like, let's share the love of these books around so we can all extend our TBRs to the sky. That is it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe, all of that good stuff down below, and I will see you in the next one. Bye. I've got a fly. Please leave. Reclaimate. I mean, that wasn't so bad. Series, I would probably recommend it to anyone that likes that sort of genre.
I'm listening.
Dislike, but this may or may not be. Okay, we'll start again. There's a few just thought I heard the ice cream there.